Chapter 15. The Post-War Boom, Suburbia and the Volume Explosion, 1950s. Before we get started, hit that subscribe button real quick, because I'm dropping a follow-up story next week that you absolutely need to see. The war is over. The soldiers have returned. The uniforms have been mothballed in cedar chests in the attic. The victory gardens, once essential for survival, have been paved over or replanted with manicured Kentucky bluegrass. The United States has exhaled. Chapter 15 of our history takes us into the bright, chrome-plated sunlight of the 1950s. It is an era of unprecedented prosperity. It is the age of the television, the tail fin, and the Tupperware party. But for the post office, it is the age of the flood. To understand the crisis that nearly broke the back of the service, we must first look at the map. For 150 years, American life was concentrated. It was clustered around the harbor, the river, and the railroad depot. People lived in cities, in row houses, in tenements, in apartments. They lived vertically. A mail carrier in 1940 New York City could deliver mail to 500 families by walking 3 blocks and climbing 10 flights of stairs. But in the 1950s, the geometry of America exploded. The catalyst was the GI Bill and the affordable mortgage. Suddenly, millions of young couples left the city. They moved to the potato fields of Long Island, the orange groves of Los Angeles, and the cornfields of Illinois. They built Suburbia. Let us fly over Levittown, New York in 1953. From the air, it looks like a printed circuit board. Curving streets, cul-de-sacs, and endless rows of identical houses, Cape Cods and ranches. 17,000 houses in one development alone. Down on the ground, the silence is profound. There are no streetcars. There are no factory whistles. There is only the hum of a lawnmower and the laughter of children. For the post office, this was a logistical nightmare. Instead of walking 3 blocks to reach 500 families, the carrier now had to walk 5 miles. The density of the route had collapsed. The stops were spread out. The front door was no longer right at the sidewalk. It was set back behind a 30-foot lawn. If a carrier walked up the driveway, up the steps, delivered the mail, walked down the steps and down the driveway for every house in Levittown, he would be walking a marathon every single day. The geography of the job had to change. The post office had to admit that the age of the foot carrier was ending in these new zones. The age of the motorized carrier had begun. They needed a vehicle. At first, they tried bicycles. They tried pushing carts, but the distances were too great. Then they turned to the survivors of the war, the Jeep. The Willys Dispatcher, DJ3A, became the workhorse of the suburbs. It was boxy, tough, and simple. But the post office needed a modification. They moved the steering wheel to the right side. This allowed the carrier to drive along the curb, reach out the window, and shove the mail into the box without ever getting out of the seat. This changed the architecture of the American street. The door slot was banned in new subdivisions. The porch box was discouraged. The new king was the curbside box. It stood on a post at the edge of the asphalt. It was a metal tunnel waiting to be fed. But even the Jeep was sometimes too big and expensive for the lighter routes. This led to one of the most unique, beloved, and reviled vehicles in postal history, the Mailster. Introduced in the mid-1950s, the Mailster was a 3-wheeled scooter. It looked like a golf cart enclosed in a metal shed. It was painted red, white, and blue. It was designed for efficiency. It had a tiny engine, it had sliding doors, it could zip into a cul-de-sac and zip out. But it had a fatal flaw. It was unstable. Carriers tell stories of the Mailster tilt. If a carrier turned a corner too fast on a windy day, the little three-wheeler would simply tip over like a fainting goat. Or, if a large dog chased it and barked aggressively, the Mailster might wobble in fear. It was loud. It vibrated. In the winter, it was a freezer on wheels. But to the children of the 1950s, the sputtering sound of the Mailster was the sound of arrival. It was the ice cream truck's hard-working cousin. But the real story of the 1950s is not how the mail was delivered, it is what was delivered. The volume of mail did not just grow, it mutated. In the 19th century, mail was personal, it was a letter. In the 1950s, mail became commercial. This was the golden age of advertising. The factories that had built tanks were now building refrigerators, vacuums, and cars. They needed to sell them. They turned to the mailbox. A new category of mail exploded, third-class mail, or, as the public called it, junk mail. But in the 1950s, it wasn't seen as junk. It was circulars. It was exciting. The carrier's bag was heavy with glossy brochures. Win a trip to Hawaii. Buy the new Encyclopedia Britannica. Tupperware sale. The post office introduced a simplified address system, patron or occupant. Advertisers didn't need to know your name. They just needed to know you lived in a house. They could blanket an entire zip code. Though zip codes were technically a 1960s invention, the zoning concept began here, with coupons for soap powder. The carrier became a beast of burden. The leather satchel, which used to weigh 30 pounds, now routinely weighed 50 or 60 pounds. And then there were the magazines. The 1950s was the peak of the great American photo magazine, Life, Look, the Saturday Evening Post, Better Homes and Gardens. These were not flimsy pamphlets. They were thick, heavy, glossy journals. Life magazine could weigh a pound on its own. Every Tuesday or Thursday, the carrier's knees would buckle under the weight of American culture. He was delivering the internet of the day. He was delivering the window through which people saw the world. Let us capture the atmosphere of a suburban delivery in 1957. It is a Tuesday in October. The maples are turning red. The sky is a piercing atomic blue. The carrier, a man named Frank, drives his right-hand drive Jeep down Elm Street. He is wearing the new uniform, lighter blue with a zippered jacket, the Eisenhower jacket, looking sharp. He stops at a split-level ranch house. He leans out. He stuffs a bundle into the box, a gas bill, a letter from Grandma, a copy of Life magazine featuring the launch of Sputnik, a circular for a new Chevrolet Bel Air, a catalog from Sears. He revs the engine. Vroom! He moves 50 feet. He repeats the motion. His arm is a machine. Stop. Reach. Stuff. Go. Inside the house, the ritual is different. The suburban wife was the primary recipient of the mail. In the isolation of the suburbs, where the husband took the train to the city and the children were at school, the arrival of the mail was the punctuation mark of the day. She hears the Jeep. She walks down the driveway. The mail connects her to the economy. She pays the bills by mail. Checks were becoming the standard way to move money. She orders clothes by mail. She joins the Book of the Month Club. The volume of financial transactions moving through the mail in the 1950s was staggering. The credit card was born in this decade, Diners Club, then American Express. Suddenly, people were mailing plastic cards and paper statements back and forth. The post office was the circulatory system of capitalism. But the system was straining. The post office was still operating with 19th century methods. Inside the sorting facilities, men were still standing in front of wooden pigeonhole cases, manually memorizing thousands of street names. The mail was coming in mountains. The Christmas rush began to last all year. There is a famous breakdown known as the Chicago Jam. This would fully paralyze the system in the 60s, but the warning signs were flashing in the 50s. The sorting rooms were so full of sacks that there was no room to walk. The mail was stacked to the ceiling. It was physically impossible to move it. The post office realized we cannot sort this by hand anymore. This decade saw the birth of automation. It started with conveyor belts, then the turnkey project. They built experimental post offices of the future. They tried to build machines that could read, but in the 1950s, computers were the size of rooms. The technology wasn't ready. So they built keyboard sorting machines. Imagine a giant piano. A clerk sits at a console. A letter slides past a window. The clerk reads the address and types a code. Click-clack. A mechanical arm swats the letter into the correct bin. It was loud. It was fast. It was the beginning of the industrialization of the letter. But let us return to the quiet of the neighborhood. In the 1950s, also saw a shift in the spirit of the mail. It became less formal.
This was the golden age of the greeting card. Before the war, you sent a card for Christmas and maybe a birthday. In the 1950s, Hallmark and other companies convinced Americans that they needed a card for everything. Get well soon, happy anniversary, bon voyage, congratulations on the new baby. The volume of greeting cards exploded. It was a way to maintain social bonds in a mobile society. People were moving away from their hometowns. They couldn't visit, so they sent a card. The carrier knew the rhythm of the families on his route by the cards they received. He knew when the young couple at 404 was expecting a baby, the baby shower invites. He knew when the old man at 408 had died, the black-bordered sympathy cards. He knew when the teenager at 410 was graduating. He was the silent historian of the block. There is a nostalgic image that defines this era: the dog. In the city, dogs were mostly kept indoors or on leashes. In the suburbs, in the fenced backyards, the dog was king. And the war between the mailman and the dog became a cultural trope. It was the subject of cartoons, Norman Rockwell paintings, and slapstick comedy. But it was a real hazard. The carrier carried a can of animal repellent, often just pepper spray, but mostly he relied on psychology. He carried dog biscuits in his pocket. He learned which dogs were bluffing and which were killers. The "Beware of Dog" sign became a standard decoration on the suburban gate. As the 1950s drew to a close, the United States Post Office was a giant, swollen beast. It was the largest employer in the country. It handled more mail than the rest of the world combined. But it was struggling. It was a government department trying to run a business in a rapidly changing world. It was shackled by politics. Congress set the rates and the wages. It was drowning in paper. The deficits were growing. The penny stamp was gone. It was now 3 cents, then 4 cents. But to the average American, the system still felt miraculous. Let us end this chapter on a warm summer evening in 1959. The sun is setting over a neighborhood in California. The sprinklers are chunking on the lawns. The smell of charcoal grills fills the air. A father pulls his station wagon into the driveway. He walks to the curbside box. He opens the metal door. He pulls out a stack of mail. He walks into the house. "Honey, the mail is here." They sit at the Formica kitchen table. They sort through the pile. There is a bill from the electric company. There is a flyer for a sale on lawn furniture. There is a copy of National Geographic. And there is a postcard from their friends who drove to the Grand Canyon. It is a pile of mundane paper, but it represents a life of stability, connection, and commerce. The carrier has long since gone home. His Jeep is parked at the station. His shoulder aches from the bag. His ears ring from the engine. But he has woven the neighborhood together for another day. He has connected the house to the world. As the lights go out in the bedrooms of Suburbia, the mail sits on the counter, waiting to be answered.
a testament to a nation that had learned to conquer distance but was just beginning to learn how to manage the flood.